How the city once called Murderapolis, Minneapolis, became center of Defund the Police movement, now grappling with violent crime spike. This is something we talked about super early on in the aftermath of the George Floyd stuff that happened. The fact that, all right, if you want to defund the police, look at the communities who have the greatest level of crime and violence. Those are the ones that are going to be impacted the most. And that's exactly what we're reading here. A couple of years later, plus some change, 2.5 years later, we are reading grappling with violent crime spike. Now, granted, crime has spiked in a lot of areas that didn't defund their police. This has been kind of a nationwide trend in general. But the cities that aggressively defunded their police created this toxic environment where nobody wanted to be a cop. And Minneapolis is down about a third of their police force. Same deal with Seattle, same deal with Portland. And we're dealing with the spike in crime because the bad guys know they can, for the most part, get away with this stuff, right? All right, let's jump on in. Let's see what we've got going on with Minneapolis. And we'll talk about it. Here we go. Marnette Gordon was doing laundry at home in Minneapolis one summer morning last year when a call came from her 36-year-old son. She figured her son, Telly Blair, was checking in to see if she wanted a soda from a gas station down the street, where he often went for fuel and snacks. My kind of guy. Go to the mini mart at the gas station. "Mom, I've been shot," he said. "Call the police." Marnette, her other son, Tamarcus, and his 12-year-old daughter rushed to the gas station from the home in the city's north side, part of town long beset by violent crime. Blair's family came upon his blue 1986 Chevy Caprice at pump number 5, beating police and paramedics by a few minutes, only to find him slumped in his car, bleeding from multiple bullet wounds in his chest. A 17-year-old male in an orange hoodie had fired 9 rounds from a handgun into Blair's car before running off. While an off-duty nurse in scrubs who'd been at the gas station tried to stop his bleeding, Marnette, a heart transplant recipient, couldn't bear to watch and stood at a distance. Telly was her caretaker. It was just horrible to see him sitting there waiting on the ambulance, she told CNN. The 12-year-old called 911 while watching her uncle struggle to breathe. Just a terrible story. You know, down at the gas station, this is going on. "Oh my God, please," the girl who was crying said to a dispatcher, according to 911 transcripts of the shooting obtained by CNN. "Hurry up, hurry, he's dead, hurry up." 12-year-old making that call. Telly Blair was among 93 people who were murdered in Minneapolis last year, city crime data shows. That's just a few shy of the total killings in 1995, when the city earned the nickname Murderapolis. Neighboring St. Paul witnessed 38 murders last year, a historic high. Now, I made the comment not long ago that, Chicago is kind of in a league of its own. And many of you said, hey, there's other Midwest cities that are wildly dangerous as well, and you named them off. Let's take a peek. Before we go any further, let's take a peek at the FBI's 10 most dangerous cities in the Midwest. Number 1, St. Louis. Number 2, Kansas City, Rockford, Illinois, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Minneapolis coming in at number 5, Lansing, Michigan, Chicago, number 7. And the reason I bring up Chicago is just the population of Chicago and the sheer numbers of people being taken out there. Chicago, population 2.7 million. All these other cities, 300,000, maybe 500,000, 600,000, 115,000 for Lansing, Michigan. So you got population bases, but on a sheer numbers, and I stand by this, Chicago's way out in front, just with all the craziness and crime and everything that's gone on there. South Bend, Indiana, Cincinnati, Ohio, and Dayton, Ohio finish out the top 10. So Minneapolis coming in a solid middle of the road in what is otherwise not a list that you want to be involved with. After the police murder of George Floyd in May of 2020, Minneapolis became a worldwide symbol for the police brutality long endured disproportionately by black people. In a kind of Newtonian response, the city became the epicenter of the culturally seismic Defund the Police movement, and that progressive local effort fizzled with a decisive referendum last November. So that is exactly what's happened across the United States. Even Biden said, yeah, we're no longer defunding the police. We're funding the police. Remember when he said that a few weeks ago? So he's come right out and said that. And he knows that there's an issue with public safety, that crime is on the rise, and that less police and money taken away from the police budget going into social services is good, but you got to have the cops to keep the streets safe. Now, people on the Defund the Police movement would say, well, the cops are all bad. They're not helping us. They're killing us. Okay. Yeah. Those incidences are extremely, extremely rare on a percentage basis, right? And so in all industries, you've got bad apples. You've got people that got to make decisions in a split second. And that's what cops are up against. You might say, well, how many minutes did Derek Chauvin kneel on George Floyd's neck? All right. So you do have situations like that. That is one instance out of how many million that occur across the United States. And we come back to, if you don't have enough police to cover basic safety within your community, those are already at risk are going to be impacted the most. And those are the ones that are in the BIPOC community, lower socioeconomic communities oftentimes, right? So this wasn't a hard call. Everybody that was kind of a little bit more on the reasonable side of things saw how that was going to go. But so many people got caught up in the whole, well, this happened, George Floyd got murdered, so then we got to defund the police, without really considering what that would mean long term. And here we sit long term, and Minneapolis is going, oh, geez, this isn't good. This isn't good. And, you know, politicians throughout the United States are, you know, the Republicans are going in hard on crime because it's out there. People are concerned about it. They're concerned about that and inflation far more than they are the abortion thing. But, you know, the left side of things, the Democrat side of things is going to push the abortion because that's what they've got going on for, you know, this election period, right? So you got to grab onto something, whatever your cause is. But this cause here would defund the police. I mean, even on a big ticket politics type scenario, those who were in Congress still talking about defunding the police as of this year, we're basically told, hey, you know what? We're not really on that bandwagon anymore. Shh, we don't really talk about defunding the police because have you seen the crime stats? Yeah, it's not good. Now, with its police department under investigation by the Department of Justice, the city of 425,000, Minneapolis, is trying to find a way forward amid a period of heightened crime that began shortly after Floyd's death. Do you remember when that happened? And everybody was sitting around going, holy cow, what is the deal here? Who gave these criminals the green flag and just said, you guys are off to the races. Let's go. And the checkered flag hasn't come down yet. It's still going, right? Some cities really working hard to get their police forces back up. On paper, Portland and Seattle are trying to do that. It's not going to happen anytime soon. It's just not going to happen anytime soon. The ability to bring new police officers into their respective programs is super slow and cumbersome. And police officers throughout the United States, along with firefighters, along with all kinds of other occupations, but specifically public safety with police officers, a lot of them have quit. A lot of them have made lateral movements to cities that didn't defund the police because, you know, do you want to work in a place that appreciates your services, or do you want to work in a place that says, hey, go kill yourself? I witnessed that so many times over at CHOP, the knucklehead protesters saying, hey, you should go kill yourself. Horrible, horrible thing to say to another human being. And yet guaranteed when those knucklehead protesters, somebody gets shot in their family, what's the first thing they're going to do? 911, come help me. That same cop they just told them to kill themselves. 911, can you come help me? Been shot. Got to choose your battles. Choose your battles. So the police have done what they should have done, which is, all right, you don't like me working here, I'm going to go somewhere else. And so numbers have been wildly depleted in these cities that went down to defund the police. And it's just not that hard to figure out, right? There's a cause and effect here. That year, the number of murders soared to nearly 80, dwarfing the 2019 body count of 46. It's cooled somewhat this year, though the amount of killing and violent crime in general remains elevated far above 2019 levels, and homicides are on pace to surpass the 2020 figure. The reasons why are far from clear. I keep hearing that. I consistently hear that. I consistently read that here. But it's as if somebody in the background just said, hey guys, go for it. Right? That's what it feels like to me, because these stats are so, I'm not saying that's what happened. I have nothing to base that on, but that's just kind of what it feels like when you read all this stuff and you're like, okay, the timing is here. Crime goes up. All right. This happened there. You see that massive spike. It's such a spike that happened in 2020 that you're like, okay, somebody literally gave the green light here and we're still dealing with that. And they haven't called it off. That's what it feels like. The actual answers, you ask 20 different specialists in this, crime, and they're going to give you 20 different answers. And I don't know what the true answers are. K.G. Wilson, a longtime resident of the Twin Cities, said police withdrew from violent neighborhoods in the aftermath of Floyd's killing, a common sentiment among locals. All right. So you're talking about locals in a BIPOC community, right? Okay. Police drew back because they were told their services weren't wanted. What happens to the good, fair citizens of those communities? Yeah, they experience a massive spike and they have a bunch of their people killed off. Okay. If you want to stick with that defund the police movement, you keep going with that bad boy. See where it takes you. So I think a lot of folks want to say, okay, but that wasn't really what we meant. We didn't really mean take all the police officers' money away, their budget away. Well, in CHOP, you did. You wanted to take 50%. And then you took 17% and the police chief quit. And it's been kind of a cluster F since then here in Seattle with a number of police officers. You get what you pay for, right? The criminals were celebrating. They were getting rich, he said. This is a resident from one of those communities in Minneapolis. They were selling drugs openly. We know that has gone on. Here in Seattle, the Blade, the section between Pike and Pine on 3rd Avenue in downtown Seattle, you can tell people, I can tell my liberal friends, which I do have, believe it or not, because you got to have both sides so you can kind of figure out, what are they talking about? You can say, hey, the Blade. And they'll go, I don't know. You know that one part of 3rd Avenue, around Pike? Oh, and they're like, oh, yeah, geez, I just never go on that section because it looks so sketchy. So City of Seattle is literally, they've got 3 options that the Downtown Association of Businesses came up with to basically just revamp that area to the point where the drug dealers and those who run prostitution and those who run stolen goods can no longer ply their wares. They're going to renovate a whole block section to make it not friendly to the criminals who are selling drugs openly. Not put those people in jail and throw away the key and lock them up for years and years. Not get them off the street, but just move them somewhere else because that area is so bad. It's like, why can't you just arrest these folks? Just arrest a whole bunch of them. We know who they are. Down in Portland, they know who they are. They've got a list of 200 people. All right, you guys are responsible for about half of our crimes, so therefore we're going to go after you. Yeah, right? Wilson told CNN the violence devastated his own family. His 6-year-old granddaughter, 𝐍𝐞𝐚𝐬 Allen, was killed in May of 2021 after getting caught in the crossfire of a gunfight in North Minneapolis. The culprit remains at large. You read these stories out of Chicago all the time or out of major cities all the time. 3-year-old getting clipped by a bullet in his crib. Just another factor is the pandemic, which some observers see as the biggest impetus for the crime surge. It unsettled trajectories, said Mark Osler, the former federal prosecutor who is now a professor at St. Thomas School of Law in Minneapolis. Kids who were going to school, who would have graduated but drifted off because there is no school, we're seeing a lot of the violent crime is by juveniles. Okay. And, what we're saying here is oftentimes it's gang related, right? nobody wants to talk about that because then we'd have to go after the gangs again. And that just doesn't seem to be part of the narrative right now, does it? We want to ignore that part. Okay. Yeah. And school was still going on, but it was remote learning, right? Which, if you're on the verge of being in a gang and going out and committing some violent crime, if you're not required to go to school in person, it's not happening, right? So I think there was some very massive, disproportionate type things that happened during the pandemic because not everybody's got a computer at home. Not everybody's got high-speed internet. I know it's hard to imagine because most of you all do. You're watching it, you're utilizing it right now, but we're reasonable here. And there was a certain segment of the population that was impacted massively by what happened when you shut down the economy, you shut down school, make everybody work from home, make everybody, learn from home. Can't imagine sitting at home on a computer as, a teenager. All right, you want to go out and have some fun and cause some havoc, or do you want to sit in there and read some history? That wouldn't be a hard one for me, right? I'd read through my history real quick and then I'd go out and shenanigans. But by shenanigans, what we're talking about here is talking about some violent crime. Citing sinking morale in the wake of the unrest after Floyd's killing, leaders in the Minneapolis Police Department say that the officer headcount has shrunk from 900 in early 2020, so right as the pandemic was exploding, to about 560 last month in August. 900 to 560. Now, proponents of defund the police are like, good. That's what should happen. Like, all right. How's that working out for you, though? Because most of the citizens are saying, hey, you talk to anybody in, these communities, and they're not on the defund the police bandwagon anymore. They're on, hey, we know that the majority of the cops are okay. They're doing their job. And guess what? We need some more of them. And we need to provide better examples to our young people that are committing a lot of these crimes. So you need to get that social thing going on, but that's going to take years to enact and get going because that 12-year-old that, in a couple of years actually starts doing some of the stuff that we're talking about, got to catch him earlier or her earlier. So it's a timing process. In the meantime, you've got, a lot of crime going on and 900 to 560 cops. That's a big drop. It's a loss of more than a third of the police force in Minneapolis. Against this backdrop, the political pendulum on public safety matters in this reliably liberal city, the Minneapolis hasn't had a Republican mayor since 1973. Jeez. And that just for a single day seems to have swung away from a progressive mindset towards the middle. What's that all about? It's kind of like folks down in Portland going, you know what? We might actually consider voting for somebody just a scooch more reasonable than the folks that we've got in office. Not necessarily the R word, Republican. We're not going to go down that road. No, sirree. But maybe a politician that is more in favor of, public safety. They're looking for folks. That's kind of where things have gone. So when they say back towards the middle, there's a lot of folks going, hey, what's happening out there right now is not reasonable. We need to get back to something a little more reasonable. And the numbers we're seeing, those are off the hook in the wrong direction. And on matters of public safety, the middle is where many of the city's Black residents already were. They weren't on board with defund the police. That was the far left doing their thing, right? They weren't on board with that. They're like, no, that's not going to work out well for us. And it hasn't. Last year, progressives touted a ballot measure that was said to have been a referendum on the defund concept. Question 2, as it was known locally, would have replaced the Minneapolis Police Department with a new public health-oriented Department of Public Safety and removed a minimum staffing requirement from the city charter. That would have been interesting. And by interesting, I mean that would have been the purge. Talking about that in Chicago, this would have been the purge in Minneapolis, right? I mean, it failed in November, the question number 2, public health oriented. It failed in November with 56% of the voters rejecting it. That figure was 61% in North Minneapolis. That's a big number for a really traditionally liberal city. Those are some crazy stats. Where blacks make up a strong plurality of the roughly 66,000 residents, all but one of the 17 precincts in the North voted against the measure. Like, no, that's not, that is not what we need. Don't think that's going to help. You're going to see more of our residents get killed, get impacted. No, we're not really on board with the purge. We do not believe that the police should be defunded, but we do believe in police reforms, said Bishop Richard Howell of Shiloh Temple, a North Side church founded more than 90 years ago. I think everybody believes in that, right? If there's something that needs to be reformed, hey, let's get that done. Unfortunately, that's going to mean more money, more funding, because you can't just say, all right, we need to put some programs in place without having the ability to fund them. And these police departments are already shy the number of officers they have. So, what are you going to do? Ray McKay Anderson, Telly Blair's sister, said, you can't possibly defund the police in a way that's going to benefit the black community. Yeah. Kind of goes to what we're saying is those in the communities being impacted the most. They're not on board with this. It's the extreme leftists, right? Dealing the final blow to the local defund movement last year was a city council vote to essentially refund a cut they made the prior year. Mayor Jacob Fry is proposing another budget bump for the next 2 fiscal years. So that is exactly what has happened here in Seattle. Our mayor, who is a Democrat, he's more of a moderate Democrat, and he's dropped the hammer on a lot of the stuff that we talk about here. He's kind of gone after a homeless situation. Let's clear things out. Let's try and get things back on track here. Yeah, he talks a lot, but he does get some of this stuff done. Some say that he's just all talk and, he isn't really having much of an impact. But I feel safer in downtown Seattle now than I do a year ago, and certainly more now than I do 2 years ago. Would I walk around at night just willy-nilly, with $1,000 in my pocket? Absolutely not. Would I walk around at night in a group of people? Still probably not. I'm going to go to a concert tomorrow night, Iron Maiden, and I'll take some video, show you what it looks like. Just walking around Seattle. And that's where the Climate Pledge Arena is. So not necessarily downtown, but pretty close. And there's been a lot of rough stuff that's gone on in that area. So I'll take some footage and you can kind of see for yourself what does Seattle look like. So we'll be doing that. But in the meantime, our mayor here in Seattle, Bruce Harrell, he proposed a budget. When you look at the numbers, you're like, you're refunding the police. You are funding the police. And that's what's happened. And the people on the far left, you're hearing crickets out of them right now. They're like, oh, geez, that's not good. Because they know that public safety is a massive issue alongside inflation right now. And so you can't go down that defund the police road where they did in the summer of 2020, the summer of love that turned out to be not so loving to, a number of individuals that lost their lives and $2 billion worth of damage throughout the United States. There's that whole little peaceful protest thing. I did do a podcast yesterday on one of the guys that brought 12 Molotov cocktails to a mostly peaceful protest in Seattle on Labor Day in 2020. He pled guilty yesterday. He's going to do some time, as he should. So you can check out that podcast. It's kind of what's going on. We're picking up all the pieces from the summer of love, from all this craziness that's gone on. But unfortunately, one of the things that is here with us long-term is the number of police officers that have either retired, they quit, they went to another city, made a lateral move to somewhere else that offered them a chunk of change. And they're no longer in the police departments that defunded their police. So, you can't deny those numbers. Those numbers are they're happening. And then those communities in turn, we just read this. This is from CBS. Which leans left, right? All major social media leans left. So, even an outfit like CBS is saying, yeah, numbers aren't good. That whole defund the police thing. City Council, Minneapolis. Yeah, go in a different direction, because that whole defund the police thing, it sounded great for some reason to those on the left, but in reality, hasn't worked out so well in the communities that they had hoped that this was the magic answer, defund the police. How about them apples? About all you can say, right? Because it's horrible, because you're talking about people's lives. You're talking about people's safety and lives being impacted. Here we are. Yeah, a couple of 2.5 years later. We're no longer defunding the police. We are funding them, but let's not talk about that, because then that brings light to that whole defund the police thing, and we're just not really going there anymore, right? You don't hear it. It's not a war cry by any means. All right, that's it for me on this one. There's some more to this article, but we've covered the guts of it, and we've covered kind of the essential. All right, we're going the other way, or we're trying to, and it's a tough uphill battle. And I think you're still going to see these crime numbers stay elevated for a while until we kind of get a handle on it. And some cities may not get a handle on it. Portland on the struggle bus right now. That's a really good example of, you defunded their police and you totally decimated the number of cops that want to work in that city. How's that working out? Go to Portland for a day or a lifetime. All right. Thanks so much for being here. We'll catch up soon. Talk with you in the next one. Bye for now.